Hello, it's Kayla from Kayla's Corner. Today I am at Koreshan. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I'm showing you a sign here. It's Koreshan State Park in southwest, I guess this is considered Florida. And I'm about to take a tour through this. As you can see, this group was a religious sect, and they moved here and started a community. And so there's several buildings in here. I walked around in it yesterday, so I thought this was kind of interesting to have in a state park. So I'm going to go ahead and go through it and film it so you can see what it's like. And so we're off on the tour. And again, if you can like and subscribe, it helps me with the channel. But we do have a tour starting now, so I'll try to capture as much as the tour guide as I can.
Was used and overused in building at that time. It is a native hardwood. Those of us from the north think of pine as a very soft wood, but this date pine is extremely dense and hard, which makes it better able to withstand insects like termites and so forth. And also when it's preserved, it takes on this kind of lovely patina color. This is original construction in the interior here. Obviously, things have been painted, repairs have had to be made. The problem with having to repair date pine is it is now considered extinct. So I would love to have, there is no picture, I haven't been able to find a picture of this piano somehow on a barge coming upriver here, but I would love to see that on this left here, and that is the original art. This piece here is also a piece of original artwork. It was painted by a Koreshan, and it is meant to represent their Koresh that Cyrus T used when he would travel around the country. You've probably heard of flat earth theorists. Well, there were also a lot of hollow earth theorists as well. Probably the most famous rendition of that is Journey to the Center of the Earth, Jules Verne. But the Koreshans took it to a whole new level. Their theory was that we lived inside. They called it cellular cosmogony. This is a very, a closed universe concept. I think Teague couldn't accept the fact that the universe was this ever-changing, expanding and contracting universe. Everything for him had to be very neatly packaged with human beings in charge of it. You have some instruments because this was a picture. It was. This was this portrait of him. We go to Estes board and you see they wore all these. Later on, they came for the SS performances here. Yeah, that's a nice video, by the way. Yeah. This was their initial dock. Later on, when they built the bamboo landing, then this one was only used for delivery of goods and materials back and forth, and people used the nicer, larger bamboo landing. But you can see how important the river was. Also, it's a nice spot to talk about some of their industries, because in addition, living here, they had to have means of support. They had to have some kind of money. They started, their bread became very popular. Really, people in this area basically made skillet bread. So when the building was built in 1920, so they were still an active community in 1920. The original, this was built at the
An interesting part of this tour is the walkways. I don't know if you can see this or not, but it's completely made of shells. So at first I thought this is a great idea. I'm going to collect shells at the beach, small ones, As we step on them, they'll crunch and make this great walkway. But in walking around, I've realized that there's bugs in these. They turn into sand or whatever when you walk on them, and some kind of little critters, some kind of bugs are through them, and it's not cool. So much for that idea.
You know, safe enough. If you want to look in, you can just look in go up the steps and look in the front door. You'll see that it's very rudimentary, which is typical in this type of environment. Would you think that the cooking would all be done outside? The Koreshans paid $200 for 300 acres. Called the Planetary Court. There were 7 women who lived here. They were the women of what they called the Planetary Council. Bertholine Boomer was one of those women who lived here. The other women all had jobs of some important. Would you like to sit on the bench? Okay. Eleanor Castle was in finance. She was like the bookkeeper for the community. Etta Silverfried. She was. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It was that they ran the businesses. Now, there's some confusion about that because, you know, at that point in time, women could not enter into contracts. So running businesses would be kind of difficult if you can't actually legally enter into a contract. But they had positions where they had authority within the community and ran things within the community. Maybe they didn't run things in terms of the outside world. You may have noticed as we were walking towards the building that there is a cupola. Henry Silverfried and his brother by a gentleman, Stephen Chiswick, who was a shipbuilder who would travel between Miami and that's because the community ate in a communal dining room. I said they lived in a socialist type of community, so there were people who were assigned to handle the cooking and so forth. And
Okay, so I've left the tour. The tour guide was really hard to hear. This is next to, I think it's 41, is the highway, and it's very loud. And it was really hard to hear her, number one. Number two, it's really hot and humid today. They said this was unseasonably warm. But I was here last night and took a lot of pictures. It'll be on Facebook. It was much cooler. The sun was not out. But right now I'm going into this building where they play a video. And I think probably I can get more information out of that. The tour guide, she seemed to know a lot. But there was a lot we didn't need to know. There were a lot of ums in between each sentence. No offense, but it just, I think it drags on longer than it needs to here. And like I said, it's really too hot. So I'm gonna go in and see what I can catch on the video, and maybe that'll be more helpful.
Located along the banks of the Estero River is the Koreshan Unity Settlement at Koreshan State Park. Although the landscape and many of the buildings remain the same, the people who lived here have all vanished. This is the story of the Koreshans, Estero's urban pioneers who moved to Southwest Florida from Chicago at the turn of the 20th century and lived here until the early 1980s. After the end of the Civil War, many Americans were traumatized over thousands of lives that were lost and families torn apart by its destruction. People began questioning traditional religions and were longing for a better way of life. During this time, it wasn't unusual to find new religions popping up, formed by self-proclaimed demagogues and reformers of Christianity.
Scientific advances were just going crazy, and people's faith was challenged by that. They didn't know how to reconcile religion and science. And here comes this guy, Cyrus T, who promised to bridge those in a very comforting way. He had all the answers. And he had what he called a religio science.
Cyrus Teague was born in 1839 near Trout Creek in Delaware County, New York. He grew up listening to sermons delivered by his grandfather, who was a Baptist preacher.
He showed at an early age that he had a gift of orator, and he would seem destined to follow his grandfather Tuttle. However, he decided to study medicine. And Dr. T graduated from the Eclectic Medical College of the City of New York in 1868.
As an eclectic doctor, he disagreed with many mainstream medical practices and strongly believed in the ability of the brain to heal the body. According to Cyrus Teague's personal account, he was working in his laboratory one evening when he blacked out and had a transcendental religious experience. Cyrus Teague claimed an angel appeared and told him he was chosen to redeem the human race. His description of the angel was that of a beautiful woman, and she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. Teague identified himself as the man-child, the ruler, the new Messiah, who changed his name to Koresh, the Hebrew translation of Cyrus, and founded a new faith called Koreshanity.
Cyrus T had what he called his divine illumination when he was 30 years old. And as part of that divine illumination, he saw God as both male and female combined. So from that point on, Cyrus T saw women and men as equals on earth. So in other words, in 1869 in Cyrus T's world, women were equal to men.
Teague claimed that this vision is what started the formation of the principles of Koreshanity.
Cyrus T wanted disciples. He was going to form a communal socialist society where everyone gave up their worldly possessions. Everyone was celibate in order to achieve immortality. He also needed to believe that the world was hollow. This was called his theory of cellular cosmogony, and that we live inside of a hollow earth.
According to the theory of cellular cosmogony, all the universe existed inside the earth instead of outside. The sun was suspended in the middle and had a dark side, and a light side that let off a beacon of light. It rotated on its own axis every 24 hours, causing daytime and nighttime. Teague spent 16 years lecturing across the state of New York, trying to grow a congregation. He continued to practice medicine to support his wife Adelia and son Douglas. At this point, all he managed to build was a commune in Moravia, New York, with only 11 people. His wife, sadly, became very ill, and he would soon become a widower. Eventually, his luck began to change. In September of 1886, Dr. Teague accepted an invitation to address a convention of the National Association of Mental Science in Chicago.
Reports were that Cyrus T was a big hit before the Mental Scientist Convention, so much so that they elected him president of their group. He stayed in Chicago afterwards, giving lectures on the ability of the brain to heal the body, charging $12 for the course. Finally, his new religion was gaining some recognition.
Over the next few years, Cyrus Teague was able to build up his congregation, mostly from upper-class backgrounds. He started publishing a monthly magazine, The Gothic Star, with his teachings. In 1887, Teague met Mrs. Annie G. Ordway, later renamed Victoria Gracia. He would never marry her, but upon his death, he claimed they would fuse into one human being. Until then, she would help him rule as the first woman president of the Koreshan Unity. Teague decided to consolidate his followers by moving them to Chicago to join the other Koreshans, living in a larger, more upscale mansion they called Beth Ophrah.
At one point, 80% of Koreshans were women. It was tough to be a woman in the 1880s and 1890s. You were completely dependent on men. If you left your husband, you could lose your children, and you might not have a place to go. So here comes Cyrus T. He supposedly knew answers to things that you're conflicted about. He's offering you shared child care and a way out of the whole marriage thing. He knew that treating women as equal and giving them equity was pretty darn attractive.
Teague began receiving death threats. Almost everywhere the Koreshans lived, their religious beliefs and practices were not tolerated.
She went a step further and said that wives should leave their husbands and join his organization. Well, this didn't sit well with husbands whose wives did leave them, and there were two $100,000 lawsuits for what was called alienation of affection. These lawsuits attracted the attention of the Chicago Tribune and other newspapers in the area, and soon it was sensationalized that Teague was the wife stealer, taking men's wives for purposes that were unknown. And I think this was the turning point when the people of Chicago turned against Silas Teague.
Silas Teague, Koresh or Master as his followers called him, had already been searching for the New Jerusalem with enough land for millions of his disciples to join him. As fate had it, the Koreshans were able to settle in Estero, Florida after purchasing 300 acres of undeveloped land for a very low price of $200. That was supposedly the amount needed to pay for back taxes. They had convinced the landowner Gustav Domkohler, a widower and homesteader originally from Germany, to join their commune. Abiding by their rules, he turned over most of his property for free, with the exception of 20 acres that was reserved for his son. Don Kohler's house, that's still standing today, was the only one on the property.
The small group that arrived here in 1894 were sent ahead to clear the land and plant crops. Life was pretty hard. They had to face the elements, including rain, mosquitoes, and the heat.
By 1903, a new influx of Koreshan settlers increased the population to more than 200. A building boom started, signaling the beginning of the Koreshan community's golden years. In an area with almost no manufacturing or commerce, the Koreshans started close to 30 businesses. Among them was a sawmill to cut their own lumber, a boatworks business used for building and servicing vessels for the local citrus industry. They generated electricity, selling it to outside customers, and operated a very busy publishing company. Their bakery made up to 500 loaves of bread a day, enough to feed all the Koreshans plus provide bread to their general store. Their original store was built in the early 1900s right on the riverfront. The new general store was constructed much later, in 1920, along the Tamiami Trail, the first road connecting Miami and Tampa. It was the only store between Naples and Fort Myers. Koreshan living quarters were constructed, separating males and females.
Teague required that devout Koreshans practice celibacy. He felt that especially for women, marriage was slavery. Women often joined the Koreshan unity without their husbands. If they brought children with them, they were separated from their own children. Teague wanted to break the family tie. This is why he got the reputation as a dangerous cult leader.
The Koreshan dining hall was 3 stories. It was the tallest building in Lee County. Education was very important to the Koreshans. They learned reading, writing, and arithmetic, along with a trade to help keep the settlement going. Adults were also encouraged to attend school to learn a trade. Women were able to learn non-traditional jobs and held important leadership roles in the settlement. Cyrus Teague had appointed 7 women to what he called the planetary court to manage the Koreshan unity's business affairs. They lived in a special building, and each member had their own spacious bedroom. Culture was also a vital aspect of Koreshan life. There would be public festivals celebrating Teague's and Victoria's birthdays, as the Solar and Lunar Festival. The art hall was built to hold indoor exhibits, plays, and concerts. The Koreshan Orchestra was one of the first in all of Florida. Many Koreshan hymns used tunes that already existed, changing the lyrics to align with the Koreshan message. It wasn't unusual for Koresh to take ideas from others without giving them credit.
In 1906, Cyrus Teague decided to get into politics. The Koreshans would all vote as a large voting bloc. They would vote for the same candidate or referendum. The Koreshans were all registered as Democrats, but 2 years earlier they had all voted for Theodore Roosevelt, the Republican candidate for president. Lee County's Democratic Party wasn't happy about that, so they decided to disqualify all the votes cast by the Koreshans in their primaries. This prompted the Koreshans to start their own political party, the Progressive Liberty Party, and also a newspaper, the American Eagle, with articles supporting their views.
Adding to even more animosity, The Koreshan Unity had incorporated 110 square miles of their land in Estero into a city. Cyrus Teed felt this entitled them to a larger portion of the county road taxes, taking away money from all the other people in the county. Tensions were running high.
So the upshot was that the Koreshans had some guests coming into town. And ahead of time, they called the hotel in downtown Fort Myers and they asked whether the guests had arrived. There was some sort of miscommunication on the phone, and the guy who owned the hotel ended up thinking that the Koreshans had called his wife a liar. So the guests do come into town, and the Koreshans come to meet them, and there comes to be a little fight in the street, which becomes much bigger, and the marshal gets involved. Cyrus Teed happens to be in town and decides to go over to see what's happening, and there's now a huge brawl in the streets. Teed has his glasses knocked off, he's struck several times in the head and carted off to jail. There are two different reports as to what caused the fight. One in the local paper saying that Teed came out swinging, and one in the Koreshan newspaper, the American Eagle, saying that Teed actually went over to calm things down. Teed had always said he was a martyr, and he predicted his own death. And so the Koreshans had this neat narrative that these injuries caused his death 2 years later.
During his final days, Cyrus Teed isolated himself in the founder's house. He suffered unbearable pain. He moved from the founder's house to a house in Fort Myers Beach, where he passed away on December 22nd, 1908. Newspapers across the country reported that Teed's body was not rising. His followers were worried, so they put Teed in a zinc bathtub, hoping he'd reanimate. But instead, he began to decompose. 5 days later, the health department ordered Teed to be buried. So a tomb was built above the sand to keep Teed's body safe while waiting for him to resurrect. The tomb was destroyed in a hurricane in 1921. For a while, those most loyal to Koreshan did stick around, and it was business as usual. They continued inviting the public to trade goods and share their creativity. Among the locals who stopped by were some of Southwest Florida's most famous winter residents, Thomas and Mina Edison and Henry Ford.
There are lots of parallels between why Thomas Edison and his wife Mina came to Southwest Florida and why the Koreshans settled here. You know, they were both interested in the climate here. They were kind of the original snowbirds to Southwest Florida. They loved the flora, the fauna, the fishing, all of those things. And Edison called Florida his peninsular Eden. So he even has kind of spiritual overtones to why he wants to come to Florida. Henry Ford had a little bit of a deeper connection and interest with the Koreshan Unity settlement. He asked questions about them. They gave him an entire set of their religious documents for him to view. He also told the newspaper that he believed in reincarnation. And later in his life, he becomes even more interested in that when his son Edsel passes away.
Ford was also impressed with the Koreshans' technological advancements.
It became obvious that Cyrus Teed's reincarnation might never occur, and a strong, charismatic leader like Teed may never emerge to take his place.
Hedwig Mitchell, a new recruit, arrived at the Koreshan Unity in 1941. The population had dwindled down to mostly 35 elderly people, and the settlement was in disrepair. Hedwig was a Jewish woman forced to flee Nazi Germany to escape persecution. She was close to 50 and already skilled in business matters. She motivated the original members, by then in their 70s and 80s, to rebuild and revitalize their most profitable enterprises. But her biggest accomplishment was yet to come. In March of 1944, she took over management of the planetary court while old members kept dying off. A decade later, Hedwig learned she was eligible to receive reparations from Germany for the damage done to her and her family during World War II. That gave her the money needed to lobby Florida's governor, Ferris Bryant, to establish the Koreshan settlement as a state park. In 1961, that dream became a reality.
The Florida Park Service is committed to preserving the memory of the Koreshan Unity, not just through buildings, but also through their ideas, their writings, and their photographs to keep their memory alive.
And that's what you see here today, traces of the past, some of them obvious, while others are more subtle, often shared by the descendants of the Koreshan Unity. Descendants like Scott Ritter, who visits the Koreshan settlement with his family quite often. Scott's great-grandmother, Rose Gilbert, was a member of the planetary court. She remained a Koreshan her entire life, while his grandfather, Dean Gilbert, left the commune at 19. He moved to New York, became a successful banker, and went on to raise a family. Scott had the opportunity to personally speak with Hedwig Mitchell, who was one of the last living members of the Koreshan faith.
We would have conversations about the future. I think she had a pretty good idea that the religion itself wasn't going to survive. The fact that she lived here alone and watched the place come apart was a reason that drove her determination to see it come back together in some shape or form.
Another family proud of their heritage are the descendants of the McCready family. Their grandmother, Marie McCready, came to the Koreshan unity with her parents and 4 siblings when she was a child. Years later, she published detailed memoirs of her life growing up as a Koreshan and her departure from the faith at age 17. Marie's grandchildren discovered her photo album in their father's attic with historic images of Koreshan life and donated it to the park's archives.
Our grandmother was a very intelligent, independent, interesting lady who was a very positive role model for all of us.
Their great-grandparents, Abigail and William McCready, the settlement's beekeeper, kept faithful to Koreshanity and lived in Estero until the day they died.
The Koreshans were incredibly industrious, and they lived at a time where they still thought utopia was possible.
They thought this was going to be a city with millions of people, and they wanted to be here at the start of a new era of humanity. They were determined, visionary folks who wanted to build a better world right here where I'm sitting.
They thought they could harness the Earth's energy and that they would live forever.
Okay, so that video showed just about everything that you're going to hear about on the 1.5-hour tour, but in an air-conditioned room. So it was a little long, but it was really informative. And again, this is located within the state park itself. And right now I'm sitting along the Estero, I believe that's how you pronounce it, river. And as you can see, there's some folks kayaking. This is actually a really pretty state park. Besides this beautiful calm river, there is a camping, which happens to be closed now. There was a lot of damage here due to Ian, but they said they've been working really hard, and as you can see, it's quite lovely right now. You can rent these kayaks. This bridge is closed off. I'm not sure. This was a hiking trail, but I guess there's some damage back there, so it's closed off. But you can rent these canoes, kayaks. You see there's some people just kicking back, relaxing under the structure there. And then the kayakers. It's really, really pretty. There's a section I'll go over to. It's basically just picnic tables and hiking trails, but also very beautiful. And at least it's a little cooler in here under all the trees. It was 88 degrees when I checked last, and I don't think it's even noon yet here, so it's going to be a hot one.
There we go, and we're off.
Okay, so I missed that. A huge fish just jumped out of the water right towards that boat. Oh, that was crazy. So this little guy had a hard time getting the boat in. Not really sure why he didn't push it into the water a little more, but off they go. The little guy's fishing, and he might have some good luck. That was a really big fish. And then we've got another couple coming down here from the other direction. It's just really comfortable here. Serene, really quiet. And so a motorboat's coming as well. A fishing boat. Kind of different. Nice to get a better view of it when it gets closer. It's kind of cool. Fishing boat. So all kinds of boats go on here, I guess. Canoes, kayaks, fishing boats like this. I'm guessing the fishing might be pretty good. So it's called the Great Calusa Blueway Paddling Trail Access. You probably cannot read this, but this is Florida fishing regulations here. And what it says is the Florida residents that are over 65 and possess a resident senior citizen hunting and fishing certificate or proof of age and residency, they don't need a fishing license here. Well, that's pretty cool. And then it shows all the different kinds of fish that are in these waters, as well as the alligators, birds, raccoons, and occasional manatees. So the Estero River says is a brackish body of water, meaning there's a mix of salt water and fresh water. So hence the variety of fish. It lists something called snook, sheep's head, mangrove, snapper, and redfish. And then it shows the flora in the area as well. So let's see how close I can get to this butterfly. I'm in the park now. And so if you have a boat, any kind of boat, or even I suppose you could put floaties in here too, it'd be a great place to go for the weekend when it's cooler. This is the park area. It's really pretty. There's picnic tables in here. There's restrooms. So you can come, you can camp, play in the water, come here and have a picnic. There's a playground out here for kids. And just if you want to get away for a weekend and just relax, kind of a secluded area right off the highway, actually, this would be a great place. So that's pretty much it for this area, this state park. It's a little long because I did tape the whole video of the settlement over there. So hopefully you find it interesting, and hopefully write this down if you're in this part of Florida. I'm down here again near the Fort Myers, Cape Coral area, because this is where I'm going to be working actually pretty soon, Monday. So I left the beautiful St. Petersburg, which is really gorgeous, and I hope to get back up there and take some boat rides and have some fun up there, to this area down here to settle in and get ready to start work on Monday. So I don't know when I'll be able to record again, but please do like and subscribe. I'll try to find interesting areas down here while I'm in this section, but I know there's tons of stuff when I go back up to St. Petersburg. So hopefully, if you're a history buff or whatever, you enjoyed this one, and I will see you at the next destination. Again, this is Kaayla's Corner, just filming different places that I'm traveling around in this winter. I have to keep saying winter because I feel like it's summer still. It's so warm. By the way, I think I mentioned it was 88 today with high humidity. So they say it's supposed to be much cooler than this, and they say January and February is the coldest, but in their minds cold, I think, is something like 70. So anyway, hopefully you'll follow me, and I'll see you on the next adventure. Thank you.